You're listening to Porn-Free Masculinity, where you connect to your recovery and your destiny.
Hey guys, we're back with The Mirror with Chris and Rob. We're here together, and Rob, it's great to see you. How you doing, man?
Good. Really good week. Great to see you, Chris, and it's a pleasure to be with you.
Awesome. Well, Rob, you know, one of the things that I know we have a lot in common, and we've done a lot of work around, is this piece about story. And, you know, I've really, in doing my own recovery, story was the thing that kind of unlocked the door for me. Is it was going to a story retreat back 11 years ago and really getting vulnerable and beginning to look at some of the formative aspects of my life and how I'd learned to cope in an addictive way with different behaviors, because there were parts of my story that were kind of that were harmful. And so it took me several decades to really come to grips with there might be something there. And part of the reason why I'm bringing this up is last weekend I got together with 7 other guys here. I'm in Mobile, Alabama, and we have a local support group here. And we did a story Saturday where we got together and we each kind of shared a story. And it was really good. You know, part of it is the fact that we knew one another. We do life together every week, but we also got to go do that deep dive and take Saturday and really get particular about an issue that we were individually wrestling with. And we got to do that in a group dynamic where a bunch of people got to speak into each other's lives and really bring about that transformational piece around story. So now that's kind of where my heart is. Well, you know, when I say those things, where does that take you?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. And by the way, it sounds like a great weekend. I'm a lot of fun. A little bit jealous.
Yeah, it was 1 to 8:30. We started at 1 o'clock and we were done at 8:30, and we ate dinner at the end of it. So very efficient. I know I shared with you and your listeners before, you know, kind of this idea of going back into my past, in the dark. I think in the past I've described it as a dark cave of my life, that were super scary for me. And you know, the more podcasts I listened to, the more experts I read about, and just as I continued my own self-study journey of recovery, I saw that one of the major themes I saw both from Christian and non-Christian therapists that were really good and centered around trauma was that addiction of any form always traces its roots back to childhood trauma. And so as this theme just kept emerging, right? And it could be big trauma, little trauma, big A, little a, whatever you want to call it. I thought, you know, I'm matching that up with what my former spouse would tell me. And just knowing that was a dark cave, I thought, you know, this is something, if I want to trace the roots back, if I want to experience deeper healing, a more peaceful life, if I want to experience, the goodness that God has for me today, I really felt like going back into my story was going to be important. So my first shot at this was a very formal process. I did a weekend online through Zoom with the Allender Center. It was a 3-day. And if you've done any story work, like that name will come up over and over and over and over. Dan Allender, very central to this movement for sure.
Yeah, and so many of, you know, if you're out on any of the recovery channels, you often see guys like Jay Stringer and others who are all Allender Center grads.
Yeah, so, Adam Young, Kathy Lorzell, so many other people like that, yeah.
So paid the fee, did the deal, and it was 3 days, part teaching, part interactive work. Each story, each breakout group stayed with the same group and had a licensed therapist. And, you know, what I learned not only from the education of that process, but then what I personally experienced was a number of things. And I would start with, I picked up really important snippets of my life that ultimately became defining moments that I built upon at a young age.
Huge.
Some call it lies or vows that we make with ourselves. And for me, the first story I took back, I'll never forget. And the assignment is to do 2 things. Number 1, remember the story, but ground yourself in the details of what happened. Like take yourself back to that moment, the sight, the smell, the sound, like engage all 5 senses into that moment. And for me, it was only a half hour version of my life that really became a center point of shame for me for the rest of my life. And here's what I've learned, not only experientially, but also just as I continued to go down this road of picking up pieces and parts of my story. Doing it in a group setting provides so much value and resource back to the storyteller. Because what happened in those moments for me, Chris, not only did I have a very safe and engaging environment for me to enter into a really scary part of my life and tell, but I had a group of individuals who had the capacity to create containment for what was happening to me in that moment as I was sharing it, but capacity and containment for the little boy that didn't get what he needed. Yeah. I had a group of individuals who were attuned. I had a group of individuals who were curious. And most importantly, and I didn't really know how powerful this would be, I had a group of witnesses that could actually name the truth of what was happening, but also was not happening at that moment in my life. And the whole theory from what I learned about story early on is, for me to heal, it's important to name the truth of what actually happened, not so that I can go back and blame somebody for it or hold somebody accountable or wave my finger and be upset with somebody, in this case, a parent or two parents. But it's important for that part of me to be able to have somebody tell the truth of what was happening when I couldn't recognize that as a little boy. And the power of somebody, and it takes like an outsider listening and attuning and creating containment. For me, it's like an outsider to see the truth of that specific situation that I couldn't see. Like there was a bias in me. There was a loyalty to my parents in me. There were parts of me that just wasn't willing to see and name the truth. And I'll finish the thought, and I want you to jump in here, because once I can name the truth, once I can actually get my hands around it and grasp the truth of what happened and what didn't happen in that moment, now the healing can. Now I can release all of the feelings and emotions that are associated with that I couldn't do when I was 9 years old, but now I can do as an adult on behalf of that 9-year-old. I can feel angry for what didn't happen. I can feel compassion for what didn't happen. I can grieve what should have happened. And I can really allow myself to just sit in all of those feelings and emotions that I wasn't able to do as a little kid. And so for me, that became powerful, like palpably powerful.
And as I'm listening to you, I mean, it's like there's a warmness that's coming over my chest, because what I'm hearing you talk about is the human experience, the ideal human experience, which in our childhood, and I think, the numbers are 50 to 65% had an abnormal. I think we all had an abnormal childhood in some way, shape, or form. That there were pieces of our molding, shaping experiences that really we weren't seen. I mean, that was the two pieces I think that are huge in what you're talking about in doing the story work is attunement. I see you, and not only do I see you, but I see you seeing me. Because if it's just me seeing you, I can put some doubt around that. I can be skeptical about that. I can judge or blame shift or whatever. But when you reflect back to me the things in my story that I really, really want to be true, and you say the words, and even more than the words, you show me the nonverbal communication, your tone of voice, your drawing towards me is like, this is what I've always wanted. I mean, when I did that first story retreat back 11 years ago, I didn't know any of those guys. I mean, they were strangers. And here I am pouring out, and it was the other piece in that, the attunement is you're seen, but the also is containment, which is I'm safe. There's boundaries, there's a structure. I can be vulnerable here and it won't come back and wound me. And that was created in that space. So as I was being vulnerable and I was telling that story, and, I like to say in a church crowd, it was cries and curses. The reality was it was fucks and feelings. Mm-hmm. I was trying to offend and piss off as many people as I possibly could so that they would say to me what I wanted, what I really felt like inside. I am unlovable. Mm. It is my fault. Mm. I'm the one to blame. No one is here for me. Mm. And in a matter of minutes, and yes, it was some of the words, but I don't really remember the words that was said. It was more the human experience, the mirroring, the kindness that was offered, mm-hmm. how I was seen, known, and loved in that moment, mm-hmm. that made me believe there's something else here that I haven't had access to before.
Yeah. For me, I love that, because that safety of that group, and to your point, these were strangers I'd never met, including 2 people that were dialing in from somewhere around the globe that weekend. Okay. And I had never felt more, by the time we finished it, I never felt more connected to myself and 4 individuals that I'd never met before in my life after going through that experience. But by being seen and being known and having that safety, like you said, the attunement combined with the containment, and then having their curiosity show up, like, I wonder what your mom was doing in that moment, or where do you think your dad was? They gave me permission to look at the truth that I couldn't see on my own. And by giving me permission to look and name the truth of that experience, the ability to then grieve in that same safe environment, to feel all of that, I will just say this. Somehow that released its power that this specific story, the specific scenario has carried over my life, really for what at that point was probably 36 years. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't have done that unless I was willing to go through the process, to go into the mud and the grit and the details, and then finding the courage and vulnerability to actually give somebody permission to pay attention, to witness, to be part of, to hold, to show curiosity, to give the compassion that I probably really, really wanted in that moment. Because that story and many others, what I find, Chris, is that I needed an adult. I needed a hug. I needed to be seen. I needed somebody to slow the sheet music down enough to say, is that little boy okay? Mm-hmm. And that rarely happened in these stories that I keep bringing to the table. It certainly didn't happen in my first story. And then to have 4 people that I've never met before hold space, hold compassion for that little boy that didn't receive that in that moment, I'm telling you, it is simply transformational. And so that was a kickoff for me. I've been on a journey to enter into as many story settings as I can. You and I have got to know each other really well. The workshops that you host, which are very similar to what you described with your own experience, they are equally as powerful. With guys over the course of a weekend, I get a chance to do that in a different setting on Tuesday nights now. And it's amazing how groups of individuals can come together who've never known each other and offer something so unique and special, but yet that is so universal to what you said, the human experience. We all needed it. Yep. We all have to have it. We all desire it. It's part of our trauma story. And guess what? It's also part of our recovery story. And to get that in small doses, not only becomes a healing, but guess what? Guess what has happened for me? I'm able to actually give that back to myself after practicing.
Such a blessing.
Right? So I don't just take, I can't wait for the next weekend. I guess I won't make any progress till I get back together with Chris Inman again for 6 months. No. Now I get to explore that within myself because there's safety and practice in it. And guess what? I get to offer that to other guys that I walk with. And it's super powerful.
So in that healing, really what you're saying is, and when we talk about the human experience, it's about the ideal and I would call it the Imago Dei, the created human experience, the way we were designed.
I love it.
How our Creator intended for us to operate as human beings in this world. And so what you're telling me, and we'll touch on this, I'm sure, in future conversations, you're telling me that by doing this story work, not only do you get to be able to tell the truth, and by the way, teaser, hang on for the next episode with The Mirror with Rob and Chris, because we're going to come back and talk about that truth and get a little deeper on it, okay? So not only do you see this truth, but you also get to be more present in your body and with your own experiences.
Yeah.
So that while those memories may come up, while those feelings may come up, you're not stuck in the same old patterns of coping and panic and trying to run to find someone to rescue that little boy.
Yes.
You become the healer for yourself.
Yes.
So the line I like to give guys is love the boy so that the man can be free. Love the boy so that the man can be free. And that line right there is directly related to telling your story. So Rob, thanks for being around and having the conversation. We love to look in the mirror together and see what will come out. We'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Thanks, Chris. Take care.
Don't forget to subscribe for more episodes. You can connect with Chris at pornfreemasculinity.com.